Good morning and welcome to SimWorld today on this Friday edition. I am Marsh, joined on Friday by Rick Blaze. Good morning, Rick. How are you?
Indeed, is it still Christmas?
Hey, it's still Christmas until it's New Year's Eve in my book. The holiday season keeps rolling. There's no reason we have to depart the holiday season prematurely. We do have plenty to get to, so let's jump right in. We've got some SimWorld U talk. We've got a little bit of player reclassification, but let's start with SimWorld FL, where last night another stinker of a Thursday night football game crossed our airways, a 6-3 thriller between the Seattle Seahawks and the Chicago Bears. The Seahawks keep their playoff hopes alive with a touchdownless win. This is another terrible Thursday night football game that we have been treated to. 2 weeks ago, Los Angeles and San Francisco played a 12-6 beatdown. Your thoughts, Rick? Thursday night football, bad ones. Does it matter?
I mean, for the fans, yeah. When it comes to marketing and market share and TV ratings, the SWFL is number one in that. So for them, it don't freaking matter. But it should matter. The product for Thursday night has been terrible for quite some time now. Unfortunately, it's not going to change because there's money involved. So it is what it is. But it is a bad product on Thursday night. And we see it every week that it's a bad product on Thursday night. But we still turn to it. We still watch it because it's still football, and America loves football.
I couldn't have said it better. Thursday night football is a atrocity. It's you look at the games the last 4 weeks of Thursday night football. You have the two absolute terrible games between the Rams and the Niners, and then last night's Seahawks Bears. Yeah, we got treated to a nice Chargers Denver game, although that one was trending in the wrong direction until an interesting fourth quarter. You want to talk Detroit and Green Bay being a one possession game. Both of those teams played on Christmas Day on the 28th, so they had a full week to actually prepare like they would normally. You're also right, though. The league's not going to go away from this so long as it makes them money. And Thursday Night Football, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it is going to be a highly viewed product because, to your point, it's football. But I find it unfortunate that most sports, basketball and football both, are the most prevalent versions of this, but it trickles down to college football, it trickles down to, English Premier League over in Europe. But all these games take the dollar amount as more valuable than the product on the field. And I think that there is, it's difficult to say it's ever going to reach a boiling point where that changes, but it is disappointing to say that we don't have groups that prioritize, hey, what if our product was just superior? What if the SWBA played fewer games? What if the SWFL did not have Thursday night games, which are traditionally not the best game of the slate? It's not going to happen, but golly, it'd be nice if it did, Rick.
Yeah, that's dream on, Marsh. Dream on.
Dream on indeed. Well, let's dream on to any folks that thought that the Miami Heat were going to be trading Jimmy Butler, as Pat Riley came out yesterday and said definitively that the Heat will not. The exact comment is we usually don't comment on rumors, but all this speculation has become a distraction to the team, and it is not fair to the players and coaches. Therefore, we will make it clear we are not trading Jimmy Butler. Your reaction, Rick?
I'll say this. Had it been any other GM or president of basketball other than Pat Riley, I'd be calling cap on all of that. But, Pat Riley is a pretty stand-up guy. What he says, he usually means. I think Jimmy Butler wants to be traded. And maybe the Miami Heat look to trade him on the low, but maybe they didn't receive any offers they really liked. So it makes sense for Pat Riley to come out and say, hey, you know what? We're not trading him. What he really wanted to say is, man, we tried to trade him. They didn't want to give us what we wanted. So as a result, we're not trading him. I think that's more likely to be the truth. So I don't think Jimmy Butler will get traded. But I will say this. I'm going to leave this caveat of him done being traded. We have seen times of Jimmy's having meltdowns in practices and things like that. So it is possible that Jimmy forces his way out of Miami, although I think Pat Riley is up for the challenge. So we'll see. We have two unmovable stubborn objects going against each other at this point in time. It's gonna be interesting. I'll say that.
I think you're spot on. I think this is what happens
I'm
when the
spot
Heat
on
tried to get him
twice.
out.
I don't know
Spot
who
on
this
twice,
Marsh
Rick.
is.
Where
I don't know who
it
this
must
Marsh
be.
is.
I don't know who this Rick is. He's right suddenly. This is a new version of you. I've never
Oh my
seen this.
God, we gotta cancel the show.
This reeks. I've said this before, but it reeks of a team that gave it their all to try to get him out and didn't. Because if you really weren't going to trade him, why didn't you drop this comment? 3 weeks ago when the first report came out, 4 weeks ago when the first report came out. They tried to trade him, and I think it's probably twofold. One, they couldn't because nobody wanted to. And then two, the teams that were like, yeah, well, we have interest. I think teams like Golden State certainly had interest. I think teams like the Lakers probably had interest if they're trying to find a way to get something else in the building and be competitive in the final years of LeBron James's career. But you can't trade him. I went through a list of teams on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and the financial hurdles that it takes to get a deal done for Jimmy Butler today on December 27th are incredibly, incredibly difficult because of the new second apron and the new CBA and the restrictions that goes into with Jimmy Butler's nearly $50 million deal and teams not being able to aggregate salaries to get him if this move would put them into the second apron. If they're already in the second apron, they can't do it. The only team that really had the roster and the contracts to make it work seamlessly and flawlessly were the Houston Rockets, although the Texans probably could use a little offensive force like Jimmy Butler. But the Rockets are the only team that could really trade for him, and apparently they didn't want him. So his list of destinations, Phoenix can't happen, financially can't happen. Golden State, they don't have the contracts. Dallas, it would be very difficult to pull off, and of course Houston. So to me, it's just you didn't get him. I think there's also the back door on this. We're saying, oh yeah, an offer came in on February, I think it's the 6th is this year's trade deadline, but on February X that we really liked, and we actually decided to trade him there. I don't think this is the end of this drama. I think it's an attempt to stop the drama, and I don't think it's going to be a successful one because people are going to keep talking about it.
Jimmy's gonna keep talking about it, either through his handlers or through social media or through some other kind of way. So I don't think it's the end of it as well. I'd still leave a 20% chance he gets traded by the deadline, amid how difficult everything may be. I'm glad the Rockets don't want him though. He's about 3 years too old for us. If this is Jimmy Butler 3 years ago, because the Rockets are still 2 years away from really, really, really competing for a championship. So that means you got to assume Jimmy Butler is 2 years older now, and that's not good.
I mean, if you got Fred VanVleet's expiring deal headed out the door to clean up some cap, I don't think it hurts. I think it gets harder for the Heat, though, before we move on. They have $52 million player option. If they really want to move him next year, it'd have to be an opt-in trade. It's not going to get any easier trying to find a partner for a $52 million deal than it was a $49 million deal. All right, let's head on to SimWorld U, where we had our first player reclassification. That's Jay Midoriya, the number 81 ranked player by ESPN. I'm a company man. I honor the company's rankings. Number 180 ranked player in the country. Player reclassification gets guys to college a little bit sooner, Rick. Good or bad for basketball?
Oh, this is dicey. We're going to see situations where it's going to work out beautifully for both the player and the university, and we're going to see situations where this is going to completely flame out. Like, they're going to reclassify, they're going to go to a team, and then they're going to find out, oh my God, they were not ready, and they're just a young pup in the big dogs world, and they're going to get swallowed up. So, which side of the coin is Jay Midoriya is going to be on? It remains to be seen. I like the kid. I think the kid has a lot of talent. If you was to ask me today, do I think he's ready? I will lean towards no. I just think that there's levels and tiers for a reason, and I think there's again we're going to see situations if we see more reclassifications where it's going to work out beautifully for all parties, and it's going to work, and there's going to be a situation where it's going to work out terribly. I hope this works out beautifully. I guess time will tell with this.
There's a lot of positives to Jay Midoriya's game, and he's unfortunately now going to be the face of the current reclassification conversation. He's not going to be the last guy to reclassify, but it's going to be a situation where he's just going to be the face of it, better or worse. And I think there's a lot of polish to his game. I also think that there are parts of his game that are still pretty raw. And I think that ideally you get that extra year to ease out those concerns, to knead the bread, to get it ready to rise. Not to say that it can't, not to say that you won't have success, but you shorten the developmental window for players. Some players thrive under that. Some players, we've seen the reclassification happen plenty. It's typically by guys that are number one in their class that are hanging around with guys that are in the class above them. That's not the case necessarily for Jay Midoriya. So I don't think it's bad for basketball because I do think that there are some times where kids are spinning their wheels. Playing against lesser competition does not make you better. If you are, a 16-year-old just dominating, Cooper Flagg, a great example of this. He did not reclassify. He might have, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think he did. But anyway, you don't reclassify. You play at a lower level. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't think it's bad for basketball. I think it's good that it's an avenue for players, though. It's up to them to decide if that's the right decision or not. Thinking of right decisions, Syracuse basketball has a new head coach starting next season. That's going to be Assad Drayton, former Run-to-One champion for Beasts of the East, has accepted the Syracuse Orange job. Rick, your takeaways.
I think this is a class act. I think this is the best move Syracuse could have made since Landon Carmelo Anthony years ago. I think that highly of this deal. Coach Drayton has a lot of influence in that northeastern area for basketball. He has a lot of pro players, a lot of coaches, a lot of. Listen, he has the opportunity to tilt the scale here in Syracuse's favor for basketball on the East Coast on the college level. So I think that you're going to see a lot of players, prep players that he has relationships with. He's highly respected in that world. Probably top 50 that's going to go from, you know what, I was thinking about Georgetown. I'm going over to Coach Drayton with Syracuse. I was thinking about Michigan. Maybe I'll go over. I was thinking about all these East Coast teams now. Drayton has just as good of a chance now. Syracuse as a program has just as good of a chance now as anybody at this point in time. I think this is a huge move for Syracuse. Congratulations for Coach Drayton. I think other teams, college teams who's maybe interested in signing Coach Drayton, missed out on what could potentially be a national title run for Syracuse in the future.
I think this was a great move by Syracuse on two fronts. One, to your point, I think Drayton's been one of the better recruiters that we've seen at the prep level. That's not nothing, especially considering you're going to be having to recruit a lot of these guys all over again to Syracuse. I also think it's a good move because you're Syracuse and you get it over with. There's always the double-bladed sword with the coach firing regardless of sport, right? When you do it during the season, it is tough, right? It's a tough look. You are admitting halfway through, or sometimes less in the case of Syracuse, a third of the way through the year, we aren't good enough. And what we're doing right now is not good enough. What we thought was going to be successful isn't. Let's cut ties. It's ugly. You put an interim coach in a position where they're fighting for their job, and in this case, not even going to finish the job with Darius Simmons. He'll be the interim coach. He won't get the head coach job. That is all very ugly. The beautiful side of it is that you get a first crack at what's available in the market. And whether you end up making a decision to hire somebody or not, what you have done is you get a chance to look at all the candidates and figure out exactly who you want to have in your house. Because guess what? There's going to be more firings. I mean, there are some challenges in Miami. There are some challenges. We saw the list by ESPN. Minnesota, Boise State. It's hard to imagine that the Broncos, with a team with just one win, are going to be keeping their head coach. There are some challenging situations right now with teams underperforming. They got the first crack. Syracuse did because they let go of their coach and they brought in Assad Drayton. I love that deal. I think it's a fantastic deal because you get out of the way and you get the piece in that you knew that you needed, Rick.
Let me ask you, Marsh, if Drayton is the 1A for right now, the prep level for coaching, like you mentioned, there's going to be a lot of more firings. We know this. Who will be right under him and say, hey, this may be the next person to go. It might be the next coach who needs to be signed by someone because he or she is just as qualified.
I think that you've got to look at the folks that were linked to this one, right? So you had Coach Dominguez, you had Coach Joyner. I think both of them, if they're getting interviews for the Syracuse role, I think it tells the market who's of interest. And I think both of those guys are most obviously of interest. So I would be stunned if it wasn't one of those two, just because of their relation to the Syracuse job.
Okay. I
You
say
got a
look out
name
for.
you want to throw out?
I say look out for Kusa. I think Coach
He
Kusa.
was also linked to. That's a great call.
I
Yep,
think
Coach
Coach
Kusa.
Kusa is a person not to sleep on. For a coach position, I think he do a really good job. I've seen him work wonders with less. And when you're looking for a head coaching job, chances are you're going to go into a position where you don't have the best talent capable on the roster. So you need to work wonders with less. And I think Kusa is a perfect guy for that kind of position.
I would agree with that. All right, let's run the tape. It's time for our SimWorld U wrap-up, a maxed-out schedule last night, including our game of the week, Arkansas and North Carolina, which was a thriller down to the wire. DJ Wagner hit just 1-3 in this basketball game, but it came with under a minute left to seal things for the Razorbacks, an 83-76 win for the number 8th ranked team in the country over 13th ranked North Carolina. Out west we go, where it was Purdue falling at home to the USC Trojans. USC moves to 8-6 on the season with a 61-57 win. Offense not to be found in this one. No one scored more than 13 points in the game. Utah and Marquette out in the Golden Eagles home court would be where we go next as we finish up our Purdue highlights. 70-69 thriller for Utah to get the win. A big one at that. Triton Hendon hits 5 second-half threes. He hits 5 threes in the entire game, and it's a 70-69 win for the formerly top 25 ranked Utah Utes. Expect them to likely be back in the top 25 next week. Virginia Tech, they keep the good times rolling with a win over Georgia, 71-54, 28 points from Newly Cox, 18 from Travion Novick in a win. Royce Anderson struggles in the second half, 0 for 7 from the floor in the second half. He finishes the night with 13 for the Bulldogs. South Carolina and Butler. South Carolina pulls the upset over the Bulldogs, 62-55. Keandre Baldridge leads the way with 16 points, a double, Amari Beam McChesney, 10 points, 12 boards. Notre Dame, let's check out some ACC hoops. They fall at home to Davidson, 69-66. Nick Hugo, 14, double-double from Deontay Odom, and Benari James helps lift Davidson to the victory over the Fighting Irish. Baylor takes down Stanford 73-72. Red Jointer with 15 points to lead the way. Shazad Jokar, 12 and 10, double-double for Baylor. 12 apiece from Daquan Sheffield and Sandro Speed for Stanford. Baylor now back to 500. UCLA, they cannot get a win on the road at Auburn. 95-77, a huge second half from Bevinson Patches and Barkley James in the win. Patches finishes with 25. Auburn Tigers in double figures for scoring. Texas Tech and Washington State. Texas Tech got a big recruit signing. Number 12 ranked recruit of the nation. Well, they get a win on Thursday night, 80-59. They take down Washington State, the number 22 in the country. Aiden Teasley leads the way with 19 points in that win. Ole Miss hosting New Mexico, and New Mexico walks out of SEC territory with a 71-59 win. Ireland early leads the way with 21 points, 20 from Damari Gray for the Lobos as they get back above 500 at 5-9. Rutgers used to be ranked in the top 5. They're not ranked right now. Maybe they will be. 84-67 blowout over the Washington Huskies at home. 25 points from Dylan Harper. 22 from Camarion Goodyear as they steamroll a 3-win Huskies squad. And then, of course, our afternoon or our nightly recap out in Cal Berkeley, where it will be the Cal Bears beating Wake Forest 73-57. A dominant second half. Cal holds Wake Forest to just 22 points in the blowout win. They get back to 500 in that one. Shedrick Bomar, 24 points for California in the victory. That's our show. Huge SimWorld wrap-up selection. We are coming back on Monday.
Marsh, that was a mouthful. That was a mouthful, Marsh, for you.
It's always a mouthful with SimWorld wrap-up. Always got something to say. We'll be back with Rick on Monday. So Rick, we'll talk to you then. Appreciate you coming in on Friday as we approach the new year. We will be on the 30th, I think, on Monday. So New Year's Eve coming our way on Monday morning. So, all right, thanks, Rick. Appreciate you coming on. Thank you all for tuning in here on SimWorld TV, the only place you can see the game, be the game.